You will be using and specifying a lot of laminates, and they've come a long way. There's lots of different finishes. Okay, so if you look on your cheat sheets, basically a melamine panel is the kind of panel you're probably familiar with. You would have seen it just about everywhere. Do any of you have laminate kitchens? Maybe? Yeah. Yep. Normally the giveaway is it's a panel that has edging around all four sides. This one doesn't, but that's another category we'll talk about in a moment. It has edging, ABS edging on all four sides, and what melamine is, if you look at your little diagram, is a thin layer of decorative papers over a substrate, and by substrate we mean what's inside. And the other page, if you flip over, you'll see there's two kinds, but we'll get to those in a moment. So that's a melamine door. Lots and lots of decors. That board over there, for example, everything except the stone looks is available as a panel. You've got a lot of choices. Melamine isn't just this sort of what we call natural or flint finish. It goes on to be available in sheen, high gloss, textured. You're spoilt for choice. In a minute, we'll go on a tour of the doors room because there is a sort of a pricing structure about that. But first of all, so that's a melamine door. And there's your cross section there, so it's pretty easy. That's for vertical use only. You cannot specify this for a bench top. It's just not durable enough, so vertical use only. Just to compare, there is a little piece of HPL right there. And if you look closely at the finish of that compared to the door, can you see how that's smoother? And that's almost got a slightly textured effect. That's because the papers on top of that door, they're thinner. HPL, so if we go to the next page over here, HPL is many layers of the craft papers, decorative paper and a melamine resin overlay, and all those layers are impregnated with the melamine resins to give you high pressure laminate. High pressure laminate is for bench tops. We do have a couple of exceptions where you can also get HPL or high pressure laminate on panels, but again we'll get to that. HPL, this one here, this is a gloss HPL. This is a gloss laminate bench top. Over there behind you, that table is a standard post-formed laminate bench top, HPL. And all those over there in that bank over there, that's pretty much what you're all familiar with. The profile over the years has gotten more square. It's not that horrible, shouldn't say that. Not many people like the really round bullnose anymore. They prefer that more square profile. So that's a laminate bench top. Both of these things, melamine doors, laminate bench tops, we're talking entry point products, really affordable. They can be used residentially, they can be used commercially in most applications, but we'll get to the specialty stuff in the end. So that is the essence of what Laminex mostly does, and then it all kind of explodes from there in the different finishes. So if we just quickly go back to substrate kinds, this is important. You'll see there's two, generally. There's particle board and there's medium density fibre board. Normally they are condensed down to PB and MRMDF. So if you see something, a specification that says, you know, Decor EO MRMDF, E0 means we have the lowest emissions. We actually have zero formaldehyde emissions, so they're actually Green Star rated. That's the other thing about our melamine range. But apparently Carly's going to cover off more of the green stuff later on. Essentially, these substrates matter a great deal. For example, MRMDF is moisture resistant, whereas something like a standard particle board, which you can use for, say, desktops in a commercial application, you probably wouldn't use that on a kitchen or bathroom doors because it's going to absorb water and split. Now, does anyone remember back in probably the old days where you would get doors or panels that would split near the bottom? That was before they figured out that the moisture resistant and smaller particle was much more resistant to water. Particle board, however, with moisture resistant properties is what's underneath this and those, because it's lighter. This is denser, therefore heavier. This is lighter. So if you were to do a 38mm bench top, which is the thickest the substrate goes, it'd be too heavy in MDF. So they use a moisture resistant particle board. But it's important that if you're specifying a bathroom or a kitchen residentially and you're doing a melamine door, that it's MRMDF. Okay, so the melamine doors, if we just flick back to the first page, these are all the kinds you can get. So melamine board are available in 3 finishes. You can get natural, which is this one, Formica is also our brand. That one's called Velour, but it's pretty much the same thing. We have silk and gloss, but we'll go on a tour and look at those later. And impressions, which is this stuff here, which is a textured melamine, and it's also on this display. It's a really good stand-in, much more affordable than real veneer. And it's a lot more resistant to staining, fading, all of those sorts of things. Okay, so HPL, you've got natural finish. You've got lots of different profiles. So there's an example of just natural finish. You've got diamond gloss. Plus we also have something called the Absolute series. But we'll do that now because this, of course, is a little, we all love it, an exception to the rule. Okay, normally when you have a melamine door, it's that thin layer of the papers. Perfectly suitable for vertical, very durable, very affordable. And HPL is only normally for bench tops, with some exceptions. There are new products on the market. Ours is called Absolute Matte, and I'll pass this around. Basically, these are new technology, and it's the holy grail of interiors, is to find a black that doesn't fingerprint. So if anyone's worked with even black paint before on a wall, or you see every imperfection. So here's a standard black laminate. If I handle that, can you see how messy it's gotten? And even if I were to wipe that clean, you'll see white marks. Whereas this one doesn't fingerprint, kind of just disappears. It's also self-healing. If it were to scratch, you can actually put a hot cloth over it and it merges back together. It's got nanotechnology, not for massive scratches. We say scratch resistant, not scratch proof, because there's no such thing. So basically, that's an HPL, so it is suitable for bench tops. But this is where we get that funny exception. It's also available on a board. But because it's HPL on board, it's more expensive than a melamine door. So just be aware, there are sometimes exceptions, and you must do your price checking before you go ahead and specify, because this would easily be double the price of one of these just in the black. But you can have a play with this in a moment. So Ultra Matte is what's really in at the moment, and there's some really great new decors and cement look bench tops and whatnot. So these are bench top HPL or HPL on board. And we also have another range called Absolute Grain. Oops. Which is, now, this is the other thing. So the melamine panels, one of the variations was that impressions. That one is vertical only. You can't use that on a bench top. And a lot of people want a timber look, say, top on their vanity unit, or they want the whole vanity unit to have that timber look. And then normally they would be stuck because you can use that on the doors but not the top. You'd have to think of something else and so on. This stuff is HPL. It has a very fine, I'll actually pass that around, has an ultra fine embossing. So it's actually suitable as a bench top as well as a panel. And again, like the Absolute series, it's actually an HPL on board. So it's a bit more expensive. The other thing that comes with, which is new to the industry, it has long and end grain edging. Do you know what that means? Basically the edging, instead of being one standard sort of pattern that usually runs with the length of the edging, they have some edging that runs like this, as if it were on the end of the panel, and they have long grain for the other side. It makes sense, it looks more real. So Absolute series was launched on Monday. So you can actually post form it as well. But mostly it would be used on board and bench tops without post forming, I think, because the ABS edging just has that nice square look. There's a little brief profile here of the kinds of, a little overview of what you can get profiles-wise for bench tops. These days, the Laminex decors can be actually brought down to a fairly square profile in most cases. It used to be that or a full bullnose was it, so you can get quite a lot tighter these days. Okay, so before we move on, any questions about that sort of basic 101, or would you like to have a quick tour and a touch of the various finishes before we go any further? Let's go in the doors room, is probably easiest. Yeah. Okay. This is the doors room. We came up with this because we have so many variations on melamine, on so on, and people need to have a vague idea of what the cost is going to be. However, you'll be in the same position as the designer. Unless you're the joiner, you will not be quoting directly unless you're working hand in hand with the joiner. What you need to use is phrases like entry, mid, or premium. And if anyone goes, well, what does entry mean? What we say is, go back to your joiner, get a quote for your kitchen/bathroom in basic materials, and then get it re-quoted in what you favour ideally. And then you've got your comparison quotes. Okay, so you can see down here, square-edged melamine and silk, so the orange and the yellow, they're what we call entry point decors. Formica to a certain extent follows the same rule, but it's just a much smaller range. Formica is actually a really good range if you're doing a multi-office fit-out though, because it's 10 to 15% cheaper across the board, meaning over a multi-storey fit-out, that would save money. So these are your standard melamine doors. This is silk. So this one here, if you look closely, has a sheen. This sheen is achieved by pressing or polishing the resins, those melamine resins. So the sheen is from within the board. It's not a lacquer on top, which means they're really hard wearing, really affordable. They're a nice way to give an upgrade look to a kitchen. So that's silk, but that's still what we consider entry point. Now over here, we've got to midpoint. These are still all melamine doors. They're the same kind of door, but different categories. Now we've got that impressions I was telling you about where it's been embossed, and it has a matching embossed or textured edging. So all of our panels always have matching edging. Okay, you can see this wall's looking a bit empty. That's because we're going to put the Absolute series up here and whatnot, and we've had a few other things come off range. But basically, remember I was saying the Absolute series is HPL on board? We have one other, which is diamond gloss on board. Remember you were sitting at that table that's got the nice big stone pattern? You can actually get some of the planes and timber grains on board in gloss. So no, there's a couple of exceptions to the rule. This is something called our fresco compact laminate, but we'll get to that in a minute. And here we have real timber veneers. So ours are called a finished design timber veneer. So basically it is real timber veneer. So there are lots of veneers out there. Ours, however, are finished with the same melamine resin as, say, these products. So they're ready to go like that. No lacquering required, no finishing required by the joiner except to edge the panels. They would be 3 times the price of a standard melamine door. They're very expensive, but they are real veneer. How it works is we take timber leaf, and you can probably see by that sort of grain being very even, they stack up all the leaf and then squish it together with the resins and then slice it through. And that way you get a very even grain. I think you'll find that your clients will either fall into the category of they love the variation in timber, the knots, the wormholes, or they just know. In which case this is perfect because it's always the same. Any questions? Pretty clear? You are able to use this showroom at any time. If in the future you've got private clients, use the doors room. We have a selection room at the other end, and you can just ask the girls, what was this again? And they'll let you know, because it's a lot to remember. Okay, what we might do is if you bring your little flyers with you, we'll go through the other side of the showroom. Because now we're moving and looking at something that we make that isn't melamine or HPL. This is vinyl wrap or form wrap. Basically, has anyone heard of vinyl wrap or form wrap? Vinyl wrap or form wrap? Basically, form wrap is, or vinyl wrap as it sounds, is a vinyl sheet that is sort of shrink wrapped under heat and pressure around the panel. So you don't get any of those edge strips, and it's a lot more durable than 2-pack because you can't really chip it or anything like that. And it comes in glossy, satin and ultra matte decors. It's also what we would call mid-price compared to, say, veneer, or it falls in that same category, a little bit above impressions. So it's a really affordable choice for somebody if they want that ultra luxurious look, but they haven't really got the money for, say, 2-pack or veneer. So have a look at that on the way past and you'll see what I mean about that it just kind of shrinks around. And you can look at our terrible storage. So that one there's vinyl wrap. Okay, so through to this side now. We'll get to solid surfaces in a minute, but we do those, like ESSA and Freestyle. So, we'll do alfresco first. So another thing you'll be using a lot of that's very popular is alfresco compact laminate. So compact laminate, if you look at the picture, is essentially a much thicker, denser version of an HPL. So if you look at it in cross section, it's actually got a black core. So it doesn't have a substrate, doesn't need edging, so you can, and it's quite waterproof. We've got planter boxes out the back and some screens, and it's weather resistant, so you can actually have cabinetry made of this and have it in full elements. So that's our alfresco compact laminate. Like I said, it just needs its edges beveled and oiled and you're done. So that's something that's in big demand for homes at the moment. Everyone's doing outdoor areas. There are other variations on this that you would use if you were doing schools or labs. So there's lab grade, there's multi-purpose. Lab grade is if you're doing, say, school labs, obviously, or even hospital fit out. But here's some examples here. This is just a good example over here of using particle board melamine in this instance, which is more affordable than MDF. Perfect application. A walk-in robe. There's no water in a walk-in robe, so you save a lot of money by using the limited number of decors available on particle board, because often people want a slightly fancier walk-in robe. So this is the other thing you'll notice, that some of these have a thicker than a normal melamine. This is called our commercial range. A limited number of colours come in 25 and 33 mil. They're only a melamine on particle board, meaning you wouldn't use this residentially anywhere wet areas, but you can use it for desktops and shelving. Everything's online, but that's another thing where you can use it residentially though, like over there, for an entertainment unit. See how the top has got the 25 mil and the shelving? So there's actually a lot in our range that is commercial that can be used residentially and the other way around. Here's an example of a veneer piece here. Another good example of use it wisely. We've had a few parties in here and you can see it. Probably vertical only would be best, unless it was, you can use it for something like that, it would be perfect. An entertainment unit rather than a tabletop. Okay, we'll look at this wall. We have another category that is specialty called innovations, which is metallic or textured or brightly coloured materials, normally used commercially, but some people use this on fronts of islands or things like that, and there's a whole range associated with that. That one is another one of those exceptions to the rule. It's HPL only, or high pressure laminate. So if you wanted on board, we had to have that custom laid up. It didn't come on board. We actually had to choose the substrate, get it laid up, and there's no matching edging, so we just did a black edging. But you'll see the boards as we wander around. Some of those are quite affordable. Some are $1,000 a sheet. So again, when specifying, you can call up customer service and find out a square metre rate if in doubt. But there's a little bit of a guide in the back of this about pricing. Let's see. So we did commercial range. Probably the other main things that we do, of course, is ESSA stone. I'm sure you're all familiar with Caesar stone. ESSA stone is the same thing, just a different brand. So it's an engineered stone, 95% quartz, 5% resin. There's some really beautiful new matte finishes. And over there in the window, you can see one called Concrete Pizzato. That looks like a hand-poured concrete slab with lots of texture and things on it. So you're spoilt for choice in terms of finishes these days in stone. Yeah, and it's got all these little ripples and bits going on. Stones like that are about $1,000 a square metre. Or ones like this, or your marble effects, or these raw concrete sort of looks. So it basically starts basic range 500 a square metre, mid price would be about 700 up to 1,000 a square metre. We'll have a new marble one soon that has that big Calcutta marble feel, and that will be probably about 2,000 a square metre. But there's something for everyone because 500 a square metre is quite low for a stone bench top. So we'll come back here. And is there any questions, or would you like to just have a tour and look at the various materials? Is there anything where you sort of go, oh, I'm confused? Oh, and of course, we also do freestyle, sorry, I should have mentioned that, which is an acrylic and polyester bench top. So here's one over here, where you can actually router it out, do undermount sinks. This one you can do without any joins. So if a customer has an island bench that's 4 metres long, and I have seen such a thing, freestyle can be actually moulded together with no joins, whereas stone, your limit is about 3 to 3.2 metres for some of the decors, meaning you have to factor in joins. My best advice is think of the material before you do the design, otherwise you end up having to change things. Go, oh, I didn't know it didn't come in that size. So basically, if nobody has any questions, I encourage you to look around the showroom because we've got all kinds of things, like we do decorative screens out of the compact. You can see one there. This is another range called Fusion, where you can have custom artwork printed as a laminate or a wet area panelling. The NRA used a whole lot of this as the panelling as wayfinding, meaning they did images in different colours through different parts of the hospital to guide you, because I've been in there. I did one section and we were walking for 3 hours. It is massive. So they've got the wayfinding, so you find your coloured entryway, your coloured lift to your coloured ward or treatment area, and they printed up images by a South Australian artist in this stuff called Fusion. So you'll see lots of different things on display, stone, impressions, silk, so have a wander around. I'll stick around, and if you find anything and go, what's this? I can be available to answer some questions. But that was pretty much a very quick download on a very big... So
is that like bench top? Can that have integrated sinks then if there's like for wet?
Yep.
Yeah.
You can actually have moulded sinks in it, which is another thing that dentists and the hospital like to do, because as far as they're concerned, the less joins, the less bacteria can accumulate. So it is quite common to see an integrated sink in those in medical environments. You can do it domestically, but it costs, residentially, it costs a fair bit.
No more questions?
That's what's called garage, because in my garage it's sort of wood look, Laminex.
Yep.
I don't know what that is, but how could that be possible? Like we can park the cars
On top of it?
Yeah.
I don't think so, not for parking on top of. We have laminate flooring that is a wood look through Formica, yet another thing we do, but it's really not suitable for that level. You would have to get a wood look tile, basically. So no, we actually do a flooring as well. Similar concept, it's basically an HPL covered in a melamine resin for the floor. So there's a lot of things we do, and if I covered it all off, you'd be here so long that you'd probably want to camp out here. So basically, if we were to overview it again, it's basically everything starts with melamine. Melamine becomes textured or shiny. We have a few things where it's HPL on board. We do vinyl wrap. The other thing, of course, does everyone know about 2-pack? Spray painted panels and doors. We don't have any on display at the moment because we're relaunching the line. But for example, I'll show you something in 2-pack. 2-pack would be if your customer or client wanted a profile door. Two-pack is pretty much the only option because you can't cut a profile into MDF. That makes sense, doesn't it? What you'd see is substrate, and then what do you do? In the olden days, they used to do that, and then they'd just paint that profile bit. It was really shocking. So basically, 2-pack is available in texture, satin, or high gloss, and you've got all kinds of profiles. Profile kitchens are really popular again, in greys and blacks this time. You'll probably see it in all the magazines. So again, if they want a profile, they're pretty much restricted to this, although some of the vinyl wrap can be done on some profiles. But 2-pack being a paint just sits better. See how fine the detailing is? Or if it's got an acute angle or a 90-degree angle, you really need the paint to sit in there. And of course with 2-pack, ours is related to our main Laminex palette range, although technically you've got your choice of every single colour paint under the sun, half strength, full strength, custom to a Pantone RGB value, whatever you want. No? You look mute with despair, or is it just too early?
It's that winter's approaching, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe they haven't had their coffee yet.
That's right. There is a lot to take in, but basically, that's the innovations range, by the way, that you're standing at there, which is the interesting metallic and mirror finish ones. And one's been stuck on.
That's not bench top.
Yeah, so you would use that vertically.
Yeah.
They're not, even though, now this is what I mean about the detail. Even though this is HPL only, it's not HPL for a bench top. It's specialty HPL only for laying up vertically. So again, I wouldn't concern yourself too much with memorising that. That range is not something you'd use very often. It's sort of more used as a feature commercially, and I must admit at the moment, matte being much more in, a lot of these metallics aren't super popular right now, except possibly the coppers and the brass ones, because everything is just matte, 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 matte. Matte and plywood, matte and timber grain. Personally, I love it, but everything comes in cycles. So yeah, there's all kinds of boards around, there's pull-outs to look at, have an explore, there's kitchens, there's displays in the other area as well. So have a bit of an explore before you go. Oh, I just realised another thing we do, Metaline. Sorry. This stuff, splashbacks. So everyone knows about glass and tile. We have one called Metaline. As the name suggests, that's actually made of metal with a special sort of polycarbonate core. It's heat proof, so you can put it on a splashback residentially. Same distance applies between your cooktop and the wall though. You can't have your cooktop hard up to it, but you wouldn't do that anyway. And that's cheaper than glass. The other thing is if you look closely at the edges, you can actually bend and fold this stuff. So you can actually fold it into corners, around the external corners, or on the edges, whereas if that were glass, there'd be a silicone line there. This, you get a really nice panel effect. On top of that, if you're retrofitting or you're doing a renovation and someone's got ugly tiles or a damaged wall, you can actually fold that panel and just pop it over the top. Can't do that with glass. And of course, it's cheaper than glass. So yeah, Laminex does a lot of products, but that's pretty indicative of how the industry is. There's innovation after innovation available to you. But the Laminex showroom, Laminex is one of the companies that does everything. So if you come in here, you could actually select an entire house full, which we do for people like DeCellis and Fairmont and all the builders, because they can choose everything from affordable, like silk, all the way through to 2-pack veneer and stone. Splashback, you can get everything done in one spot. And we also provide large samples for free. So 150 size samples for you and the customer, you and the client. Okay.
Is that
Cool.
the only colours that it comes in? Or?
Yes, that is expanding later in the year, but for now that's the colour palette. They're having some matte ones, of course, later in the year. And possibly some patterned ones as well. And that's the thing. I really encourage you to not just rely on, and I'm sure you won't, what you hear in these various training sessions, because the innovations are so speedy and they're happening all the time. Look at websites, go online, just keep researching and you'll keep up with everything basically, because our website is pretty much always updated all the time with interesting new ways to use materials, interesting new materials and launches. So just be aware that it's not sort of what it used to be, which was one kind of materials forever. It's happening all the time. Any other questions? Okay.
Splendid.
Have a wander around. So I'm Kathleen. I'm an architectural specification representative. You can call me if you're really in a pickle with a customer. However, we encourage you to use the showroom and the showroom team. to help you with information, or if you want to use the sample room, you're even welcome to come in here if you're putting together boards for presentations. Do they do real boards still, or is it more virtual? Great. There's room for both. When you're out in the industry, because I go to all the big firms, some firms still do hand drawing and have it up on the wall for their brainstorming ideas. They have real samples, they have virtual things. You've got to have your hand across all of it. Sound good? All right, that's a pleasure. Yes, have a wander and then ask questions, because while it's fresh in your mind, and you've got your little cheat sheet as well.
Great.
Cool, pleasure.